right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is WJOB 1230 AM and 104.7 FM in Hammond, Indiana, and it's the morning call with Tom Dabertin, and it's great to be here with you this morning. A little cold outside compared to yesterday. We'll get to the weather in just a second, but we're going to take your calls at 845-1100 is the number to call today. And at 7 o'clock, we have the Bishop of the Gary Diocese, Bishop Robert McClory, will be here in the studio with me. He'll take your calls. And then at 8:30, we have the Whiting Robertsdale Chamber of Commerce show. So we've got a lot to cover this morning, and we want to get to your calls and talk about a lot of things. But let's begin with traffic. And traffic in northwest Indiana looks great right now. I-65, 8094, the Indiana Toll Road and Klein Avenue, all in great shape. Going across the line in Illinois, it's pretty much the same. 294 looks great, I-57. The Bishop Ford all look good, and even the Dan Ryan looks good. So now's the time to be traveling through the Chicago area. Don't forget, tomorrow is Holy Thursday and then Good Friday, so a lot of people will be traveling for Easter, beginning probably later today. So if you need to get into the city, now's the time to do it because it's going to build later this afternoon. With that, let's talk about weather, because weather is all over the place, isn't it?
Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 39 degrees with highs of 45 and lows of 43. It's going to be mostly cloudy, breezy, and cooler with little rain. Then later tonight should be breezy, cloudy with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. And then tomorrow on Thursday we'll be having highs of 73 and lows of 52. Should be cloudy, windy, and warmer with a couple of showers and a heavy thunderstorm. And then Friday we'll be having highs of 65 and lows of 54 with variable cloudiness.
Yeah, so it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster the next 48 hours. And did you hear or see the thunderstorm from night before last with the hail?
I did.
Yeah, that was a pretty heavy thunderstorm that came through. But looks like we're going to get more of that type of weather the next few days. Of course, this is the beginning of April, and April is always the unknown month, I call it, because you just never know what the weather is going to be. 1 minute it can be warm, the next minute it can be cold. You can have sunshine and then thunderstorms. You can even get snow in April. Let's hope we don't, but it'll be all over the place. So 845-1100 is the number to call. One of the local stories that I find very interesting, I'd love to hear people weigh in this morning, is Governor Braun showed up yesterday in the region. Now, he came up for a couple of reasons, but he stopped by the picketers at BP Oil and stood out there, held a press conference, and said words of support. As of last night, there were about 700 comments on his Facebook post, and many of them were very negative from local residents. In fact, a few people that even are associated with WJOB saying, "Oh, you're just a grandstander. Stay home. You don't really care." And I found that very interesting. Governor Braun, as I recall, is probably the first governor that's actually shown up on a picket line locally to support the picketers, and then they trashed him for it. I know that we're very divided as a nation when it comes to politics, but if I were I did see some positive comments from the people that were out there, but from the Monday morning quarterbacks in the region, they're all complaining about Governor Braun, saying you're anti-labor, you're anti-this, you don't care about the region. And some of those things may be true, but in this particular case, he held a press conference that got covered by all the Chicago area press, as well as statewide news media, and got some good publicity, I think, for the strikers. And people dumped on him. And I thought that was very odd. I mean, they say politics makes strange bedfellows, and here's the governor of Indiana, shows up on the picket line to support those that are on strike due to the lockout, and then people basically chastise him for doing what I would say is the right thing. So that's an interesting topic to talk about. 845-1100 if you want to join in on that one. President Trump is going to address the nation this evening at 8 o'clock about the war with Iran. It appears that he is going to announce that we are going to wind down our activities there in the next couple of weeks, which I think is good news, especially for all of us who have to buy gas. Um, so that's happening. And then also, Artemis 2 is supposed to launch today at about 5:24 p.m. in the afternoon. I'm a little upset. They were going to launch Artemis 2 the first week of March, and it was supposed to fly on a southeast direction from Cape Canaveral, which means I would have seen it. If I was down in Florida, it was going to be a nighttime launch. I would have seen the thing. I've talked to people who said that back when the Apollo missions were launched, it would brighten up the sky in Florida like daytime for a few seconds. And so I was all excited to see it. And of course, now I'm up here, and they're going to launch Artemis 2. They didn't check my schedule, but it should be a very interesting mission. It'll be the farthest man has ever flown away from Earth, because they're going to not just orbit the moon, but they're going to do what's called a slingshot orbit. So they're going to shoot out past the moon into space and then come back. So that'll be interesting as well, and hopefully everything goes well with that mission. It's the mission before the actual return to the moon. So for those of us that like science, it's a very interesting mission. I know some people are saying, well, we've already been there. Why are we spending all this money? But I will say from the 60s and early 70s, there was a tremendous jump in technology and ability in this country, and it was largely due to the space program. So if it improves our way of life, it improves technology and applications of technology, I think the cost is relatively low compared to some of the things we spend a lot of money on. So with that, let's go to callers, and we have a caller. Good morning, you're on the air. Need to turn it up. I can't hear him.
He hasn't said anything.
What?
He hasn't said anything.
Oh, good morning, you're on the air.
Who, me?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, I didn't even hear that beep. That's why I didn't say nothing. Good morning.
Just a little bit more on mine, please.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah.
Can you
Go
hear
ahead.
me now?
Go ahead,
Hello.
Mike. We're just adjusting
Good morning.
things here. Go ahead.
Well, yesterday it was a photo shoot, so our first congressman can get in the pictures, get his picture taken to promote, that he's in this area doing nothing for us, and then Brown come up here and everything. But the thing by the way, I got my stupid letter from NIPSCO that has my name, all the stuff, explain everything. But like you said before last week on your show, it doesn't have my account number on there or anything.
You're supposed to trust in them. They're sending you a letter telling you that they admit that there were problems, but just trust them. They've checked, and they don't owe you any money. Yeah, that you can take that one to the bank.
And yesterday I heard on the news, BP's got 400 people working inside the plant now with the lockout. Okay, how many people, why don't they say how many people are supposed to be working in that plant to operate that plant safely? Why don't somebody get a report and put out how many people are supposed to be inside the plant working and operating that plant safely, And then another thing is I know you're going to probably bring it up. Midnight last night, the contract for NIPSCO ended. Are they standing on the picket line this morning, or what's going on with that deal? I didn't see nothing on any news, or nobody's posting that.
Yeah, I've not heard any status yet on NIPSCO, but you bring up a lot of good points. I mean, it is quite possible that NIPSCO may go on strike, and again, it's just like one public relations nightmare after another for NIPSCO. And you brought up that letter, Mike, and I can tell you that after doing the show last week, I walked into a local store in the area, and I had two people come up to me and said, "We heard about that letter, and we got the same letter." And what a joke that is! That just trust us. And we made a mistake.
Then I got a letter. Then I got a letter from Washington, the White House, yesterday. I got that letter. They're going to pay all my bills.
What's that about?
No, I got a letter from White House that I got to send them all my bills. They're going to pay my bills.
What are you talking about, though? I mean, what do you mean you got a letter from the White House and they're going to pay all your bills? I'm not sure I understand.
But did anybody forget it's April Fool's?
Oh, there we go. There we go. All right. That was good. You got me completely.
Yeah, I had to be careful how I said something because I didn't want to make anybody mad. And I guess, Lisa, you laughed about that deal, you know. I mean, it'd be nice if the White House would send me a letter and tell them to put all my bills in an envelope, send it to the White House, and they'll take care of my bills, you know.
Well, that was good. You got me completely. I mean, I was thinking intently, why would they send out a letter like that? And you caught me off guard. So you're absolutely right. Today is April Fool's Day. So good job on that.
Hey, I'm gonna let you proceed on with the good show this morning, you know, and you know, everybody got to dress a little warmer today because this isn't Florida weather right here today. So
no, it's not. It's cold, and you know, after being down in in Florida for those many weeks, it makes it feel that much colder.
Yeah, but everybody out there just kind of dress a little warmer today and be careful with the weather conditions and have a wonderful, safe day. And just be safe today, and, you know, maybe put your doggy jacket on for your doggy when you walk them.
All right. Take care, Mike. Happy Easter. Take care.
Yep.
845-1100 is the number to call. For some reason, that call is really, really faint on these headphones.
Do you want to try a new pair?
Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. Well, these are disposable, so they're pretty cheap. And
we can try another pair. Sure, if you want to toss one, we'll see if I can catch it. Oh, she got it over here. Good job. 845-1100 is the number to call. We've got additional callers. And give me 1 second, folks. I'm going to switch out these headphones because I think that's probably the issue. So, and this is like back in the days of Ray Rayner. And you don't know who Ray Rayner is, but I do. Hold on. All right, let's go to the call. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning. Good morning, Tom. I'm hearing, and I talked to him. Frank Mervyn says he's coming on your radio show.
Oh, sure, yeah. Where did you see Frank? Where did you see Frank MX? I know now it's April Fool's, so yeah.
You know what? Only time I see him is on the internet. You ain't going to see him there on a Wednesday, but he should come in and talk about this NIPSCO deal.
Well, you know, I saw that he posted about the Wheeler Post Office, and I read the post, and I thought, okay, this is a pretty good move on his part. Pretty self-explanatory. You know, people deserve mail delivery, and they've had these issues. And, you know, he's fighting to save the Wheeler Post Office. And then I read down the line and somebody says, okay, do you know that the Wheeler Post Office has been closed now for 3 years? Why are you sending out a letter now? It closed in 2023. And I thought, wait a minute, this doesn't make any sense. You mean the thing closed in 2023 and now you're taking a stand on it? And I thought that was kind of comical. But, you know, I guess it's never too late.
Well, what I want to say, and I know I'm repeating myself, sometimes you have to take a step back in labor. And with the way things are going now, and this goes for U.S. Steel. I hope the guys are listening at U.S. Steel. Sometimes you got to take a step back during a contract and get job security, contracting out. And with that, and I've discussed this issue before, and Hargrove and Phil King and Mezzo, they were the first ones to dream this up, and it worked. So instead of going for money, take a step back and secure your job. And what that means is get contracting out. that before you get laid off, you have to do all the work first in-house people, then the contractors come in. That will stop a lot of this standing out on the street. That means contractors can't come in during a strike if there's nobody working in there. That'll stop the picket line. That'll stop everything. And that's what.
Can I ask?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Can I ask a question? I mentioned before about Braun coming up yesterday, and of course longtime steel worker, union member. How do you feel about Braun showing up on the picket line yesterday, holding a press conference in support of the people that are on strike, and then all the people on social media slamming him for doing just that?
I think that's kind of wrong. Anytime you can get a dignitary to come out, because I've never seen anybody come out when we were on the picket lines at Inland Steel, a fair contract, all that. That gives a lot of publicity, and you really shouldn't go to BP for your fuel or anything to do with BP. And I think that was a brave move on Braun to do that, and I think it's disrespectful to do that to that man. So I really think that with the power he has, he could go into the president, which is Trump, and maybe they can do something, and maybe they cannot. But to sit there and diss a guy like that's completely wrong.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's very rare for a governor, let alone the governor of Indiana, to show up on a picket line. He gave them a great amount of publicity, great amount of press, and reading the comments last night. Again, there were 639 when I was reading them, and many of them were very, very much opposed for what he did. Yet there are people who say, I'm pro-union and you're not, and you shouldn't have been there, and you should not have done this, and you're grandstanding. And, whether it's Braun, Mervan, anybody, if they show up on the picket line and it gets you positive press, it's a good thing. Why would you diss that move? I was very shocked by it.
Okay, here's what I do know. I do know a Ford worker, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The first thing I would look at if Braun was driving an American car, that's the first thing I'd look at. And I know Mervyn wasn't, okay? Mervyn was not. Now, if you're going to promote, if you're going to walk the walk, talk the talk, walk the walk, Mervyn's driving Mitsubishi, Japan car, and everything else. So
although
what I'm
Mitsubishi
saying,
makes a lot of their vehicles in the U.S.
Yeah, but the profit goes back, Tom. We talked about this before.
Yeah, we've talked about that.
But what I'm trying to tell these guys at U.S. Steel now, and I hope they're listening, and I hope Millsaps is listening, because when we went to Indiana to protest Pence at the Indiana football game, these guys at U.S. Steel now got a new owner. Now, Trump made sure that nobody gets laid off when he's in office. You just can't shut down Granite City or any of these mills or any of them departments. So what the union has to do now, like I said, sometimes you don't have to take a step back, but you don't have to I want this. You have, at U.S. Steel, you have to get contracting out, which means job security. That means the in-house people do the work first before the contractors come in. That'll solve all that picket line stuff. And being that Nippon owns, Nippon's going to come down on them, because if you listen to Lorenzo Conclave from Cliffs, who owns Inland Steel, he said he's going to have to cut and slash if he got a chance to buy U.S. Steel. So Trump put it in the bylaws, which when them Three Stooges were on the other week, D'Lo, Slagle, and Kuziak, that Trump put it in there that you can't lay nobody off. And if I was Millsaps, I know I sat next to Millsaps because I make cartoons and he wanted to meet me and this and that. And I sat next to Millsaps that whole football game. He's a really good guy. But we're making the same mistake as we did over 30 years ago. These guys at U.S. Steel got to say, you know what, we got to step back. We got to get these guys job security, and then the next contract will move on. And, you know, me sitting here I hired in 1975, watching this episode happen all over again with these steel workers or these refinery guys getting laid off. It kind of like brings everything back up again. So I'm for the workers. And, you know, these workers, these are the guys that go down the they go down to all the car dealerships to spend money. It's a vicious circle.
It sure is. It absolutely is.
Yeah. But as far as, I just hope that somebody's listening that's driving to work today at U.S. Steel, and that they get a contracting out, a job security clause like we did, because the contractors were coming in right and left. And Lee said something that nobody agreed with, and he was totally right. Those jobs that I was in field forces, and those jobs are given out by engineers, and they were giving them to the contractors, and that was Lee was trying to bring out, and he was completely right. I hope he's listening. But I'm going to let you go, and let's hope we get everybody back to work, because it's just, you know, we used to say back in the day, me and my buddy, lose a job, lose a wife.
There you
I'll
go.
let you go, man.
All right. Not
only
only labor advice, but marital advice from MX. Thanks so much. Hey, thanks for the call.
Yeah.
Take care.
All
right, we're going to take a quick break. If you're on hold, just stay right there. We're going to be right back. You're listening to the Morning Call on WJOB.
Tech Credit Union supports the essential role of union labor in building strong communities. That's why we offer hassle-free banking, financial empowerment, and a commitment to your success. Save for the future, handle life's challenges, and trust a partner that stands by hardworking union members. Tech Credit Union, the better option for you and your money. Visit techcu.org or call 800-276-8324. Tech Credit Union, supporting union families every step of the way.
Summer's coming, and Deep River Water Park is taking applications for all positions. We have jobs both inside and out for all ages that offer great benefits. Free admission on your day off for you and a friend. Free uniforms, paid training, make new friends, flexible scheduling, and more. To apply, just go to deepriverwaterpark.com and you're on your way to a summer of rewarding fun.
Deep River Water Park. It's simply splash-tastic.
Plumbers Local 210 is building the future, and we're looking for service plumbers to join our team. Our training center invests nearly $500,000 every year to make sure our members are the best in the industry. From a 5-year apprenticeship and an associate degree at Ivy Tech to ongoing certifications in safety and new technology, our plumbers are trained for excellence. Every member is drug tested and licensed for your safety and peace of mind. When you need plumbing work done, make sure you ask for the license. It's your right to ask.
Introducing Powers Health, a health system with a new name and a strong legacy of caring for families in our community. One with a tradition of advanced specialized services and a vision for the future. One with a commitment to medical excellence and compassionate care. Everything we do, everything we believe, Powers Health.
All right, we're back. It's the Morning Call on WJOB, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM. It's Tom Dabertin sitting in here this morning, and great to be with you. And we're talking about a number of things. And again, one of the big stories yesterday was Governor Braun came up, talked about a number of things, was here for the dedication or the opening of the new West Lake Corridor on the South Shore. Spoke about the Bears, but also went out and stood with the picketers at BP, held a press conference, drew a lot of publicity, and a lot of people dissed him for it. And they're pro-labor, but they're dissing him for it. And, you know, as MX said, hey, you grab the publicity wherever you can get it. 845-1100, we've got callers. Good morning. You are on the air. Good morning.
Good morning. Hey, just wanted to, I don't know if this is really a traffic thing, Tom, but people may want to be aware if you're going westbound on Ridge Road, west of Calumet Avenue, a lot of traffic around the new train station. People are just lining up to get on that new train. And it's hard to tell what is commuter traffic and what is that transit-oriented development that we were all told was going to just blossom around this train station.
And happy April Fools to you as well. Happy April Fools to you as well.
I thought the train was opening up today.
Well, I think
I thought you said Braun was in yesterday, and then I
was.
thought that today was supposed to be.
Yeah, they had some sort of ceremonies yesterday. I know the mayor of Hammond had a ceremony breaking ground for the new downtown Hammond train station, and so yeah. I thought you're right. I think you're right about that.
I'm sure they had huge crowds. I'm sure they had huge crowds. I think they did it on a Sunday because they're all so damn embarrassed. None of them actually want to show up and be the guy to cut the ribbon to this fiasco.
Well,
this $1 billion plus fiasco.
Well, it'd be very interesting is I hope that somebody, and unfortunately I have to say it, I don't think you're going to get this out of the Times, but I'd like for somebody to do a story or a study to see the impact of the Westlake Corridor on the stations in Hammond and the station in East Chicago. So when I look at the Westlake Corridor, I basically say it's not going to create new riders. It's just going to move the riders that go to EC and Hammond down to Munster and Dyer. And I know a lot of those people, and they've told me for years, hey, look, when the Westlake Corridor opens, I'm not going to have to drive as far. So what does that do to all these great big lots in Hammond and EC? And I'd like to see what the impact is on ridership from those stations 6 months to a year from now.
Well, with all the transit-oriented development that's going to happen, Tom, it's going to be crazy. I mean, it's just going to be nuts here and around all of these stations, and it's shocking. I think it's shocking, at least, that there really wasn't a major grand opening, if you will, if you want to call it that, event ribbon cutting, because we were told by people of both parties that this is just going to be fantastic. This is going to be mind-blowing what's going to happen, transformative even for Northwest Indiana. And I honestly think that they all sat back and none of them really want to be associated with it. Yeah, they got to admit that it's happening, but we will never in a million years, I believe, ever know what that thing cost.
$1.4 billion, somewhere around there. And when you think about it, I mean, to
go 6 miles.
To go 6 miles.
6 miles of railroad. 6 miles of railroad track costs $1.4 billion. And I don't know whether they've straightened it out. This may have been old news that I was reading, but that the train schedule, it looked like Helen Keller did it. I mean, it's supposed to be so screwed up that the sequence of trains that run on this little spur don't really sync up with getting people to downtown Chicago. Maybe that's been straightened out, but I read a story that it is the most convoluted. Somebody dropped a hit of acid and then said, hey, let's come up with a train schedule here.
Well, Gavin Newsom,
makes zero sense.
I understand that Gavin Newsom actually has a hand in it, putting together the schedule, and actually he was in charge of oversight for those 6 miles. I mean, that would fit right in with his $15 billion train to nowhere without any track laid.
Yeah,
so,
train to nowhere. Yeah.
Fair
enough good farmland to put in a train nobody wants. You can't afford, and
they haven't. And don't forget, they haven't put down one inch of track yet. So it's right up there with that. I mean,
how about Frank? I'm sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to interrupt, but did Frank show up for the grand opening? I mean, he was.
I didn't see any posts. I did not see any posts from Frank Mervan, so I can't tell you. But I just got a great text from somebody who said, hey, this was originally Pete's baby. Did he come into town for it? And I don't know. I didn't see.
Well,
I
Pete's
didn't
running
see.
the airport, isn't he?
Well, he was.
Pete out
He's
Gary
not
was
out.
on
No,
time?
he's not out at the airport anymore. I don't think he's as involved with the airport as he was. Now that we have all those commercial flights out of Gary, I think Pete's moved on to his next challenge because they've done a great job.
What a career that man! What a career of wasting money that man has had. Thank God. Ben, hey, thank God we got Frank in there though to carry on the tradition of pissing away money on things nobody wants. It's really fantastic. We Northwest Indiana, baby, we keep it rolling. We keep that train rolling. Pardon the pun. But everybody, I got to go, but be careful on Ridge Road this morning, everybody, because it is cray-cray out there with all this transit-oriented development.
All right. Thanks so much for the
Take
call.
care.
845-1100. That was really good. He did a good job on that, Lynette. When he said that there was all that traffic on Ridge Road due to the new transit-oriented development, that was good. 845-1100 is the number to call, and we've got another caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing well, Tom. Tom, my good friend MX talked about the Steelworkers Union in Local 1010, which I was very much part of the Mazo, Tom Hargrove, Jim Balanoff. I was a part of that caucus. They looked at us as being radicals. Local 1010 because we fought.
Hold on one second. One second. I don't want to interrupt you, but I do want to mention Paul Goddard, Region News Source, always on top of things. McDermott, Mervan, and Braun all spoke and rode the train yesterday. Pete was not there for the opening, so there you go. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Sorry to cut in.
So I am still. It's kind of like I'll be a union guy forever. Okay.
Sure.
I'm sorry about that. If that's going to piss some people off, because as a result of me being involved with those guys and MX, you came along a little bit later on, but you were right about Don Lutz and some of those people. They were just tremendous. They were fighting, but they were looking at as communists. They were leftists because they were fighting everywhere they would go. They would be fighting the union, and sometimes, they would be fighting for progress. And then I know I went all the way to Indianapolis. They call work for less. We call it work for less, when they was basically trying to bust the union. And I went there. Maybe, I think right now Braun should have been not booed if he did. I don't know if he did when he went out to the BP Amico. But if he did, that maybe he would be willing to help us now, but they were against us then. I know that.
Well, here's what's interesting. So, Ron, I'm glad that you called because MX said, look, you take your support wherever you can, and the comments that I saw last night from people that were out on the line yesterday said, hey, look, if he wants to come out and support us, we're there for anybody that supports us, and we're going to support them, and we appreciated his gesture. And then there were all these people though that said, oh, he should have never been out there. I'm pro-union, and Braun is anti-labor, and he shouldn't be out there. And Ron, if you were on strike, and here, I'm going to take a real extreme, okay? I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. If you were on strike and Donald Trump showed up, you'd correct me if I'm wrong, but you'd welcome him because he'd bring a lot of press and a lot of coverage to your plight, right? If you're out on the picket line, you don't care who comes, right?
Trust me, I would have. Thank you, Mr. President, because I'm not one-sided. I think I've said this before. When I hear people say, and I think you said they got good people on both sides. Yeah, all the Democrats are not good, so all the Republicans are not good.
Right.
So we need to get away from this. So I basically went out there yesterday, and I took them some donuts and some rolls and stuff, and I took early in the morning, and I was out there, I guess, on Indianapolis Boulevard, and when I went there, and I went to blow, and they went thumbs up, and so I pulled over. They didn't know what I was doing, so they went up and shook my hand. Told people, "Oh, I've heard you. I said, "Oh my God." They said, "Well, we appreciate you so much over the years. We remember you from Inland. I still say Inland Steel Town."
Sure.
and so I said, "Well, no." I said, "I'll be back, and I will be back. because right now it's a protest against NIPSCO, which I am against what all this thing going on in NIPSCO. I'm not one-sided,
Right. Did you get one of those letters, Ron? One of those wonderful letters that says that there was a problem with their meters, but don't worry about it because they checked and yours is fine, even though it doesn't have your name on it.
I heard about it, but I did not get a letter. I'm going to be very honest.
Well, think about it for a minute. They tell you, trust us. I mean, that's what the letter says. Trust us. We checked. Dear valued customer, we checked and you're not affected. But it doesn't even have your name on it, let alone your account. So how is it that you can trust them to tell you that they checked? I mean, what craziness.
Right. Now, and I've had some issues. I used to protest NIPSCO, and at the time, my good friend Mike Suggs, I have to say, I understand he was working for NIPSCO, and it wasn't his company because I think Mike Suggs have done some good things.
He's a nice guy. Look, people like to knock him because
he's a nice guy. That was a job for him.
Right. People like to knock him too because he's married to Verley, and you know what? His views and Verley's views are separate, right?
Verley is a very good. Yeah, Verley is a good friend of mine.
Yeah, but again, I know them both, and you can't hold Mike Suggs responsible for Verley's views any more than you can hold Verley responsible for Mike's views. I mean, they're married, but they're not responsible for each other's views.
Yeah. See, Tom, you probably heard, I've been a protester from day one, but it was always trying to make, as John Lewis say, good trouble. Sometimes it's for us to get up because all of us are basically in the same boat today. We got some things with the gas being extremely high. Right now, I'd like to fly. I'd like to go to Florida like you do everywhere, but I can't afford to go because my price is up. My airline ticket. I said, oh no. I told my girlfriend. I said, no, we can't go, and we're definitely not going out of the country because we may not get back. So it's but I'm there for them, and I'll be there for the union forever. I was I was a union representative out of 1010 because I went out of the mill for a very short time.
I remember back in the 80s, early 80s when you and I were precinct committeemen and we first met, and you told me all about 1010 and
right.
I mean, again, it's what's a real tragedy with this whole BP issue is the company talks a good game. They talk about how engaged they are in Northwest Indiana and all the things they do, but they're not the old Amoco. They're not the old Standard Oil, and they really, for BP Oil, they're run out of London, and Northwest Indiana is just another location and nothing more than that. And so it's sad.
I know. I heard MX was talking about these cars. First of all, we could not drive any car, Nippon, these Japanese cars. But I told them, I said, you know what? We are making steel right now, and they got a plant down in for Toyota down in downstate Illinois. They got. I said, we so you want to say you can't drive these cars in? We selling them steel. So. Again, and the same.
Well,
thing
look at all the auto plants in Indiana. You drive down I-65, you see the Subaru plant, you see the Toyota plant.
Absolutely.
I mean, those plants are kind of saving the steel industry in Northwest Indiana because they're taking a lot of that steel.
Tom, I'm glad you saying it because if I say it, sometimes we get caught up into just because we don't like what a person say. And I want to hear all the voices because MX got some good points when he talks about going back to the Steelworkers Union when we fought and they call us radicals. And they know they call us radicals, but we got results there. We got results, and so today I'll be union forever. Wherever there's a picket, I will join them when I can, and I'll spend money out of my pocket I guess I didn't spend that much yesterday, maybe $100, but I'll spend more if I have to, and I'll be going. And I told them I'll be coming back there. They said, "Well, like you are." I said, "No, I'm a former union official at Local 1010, United Steelworkers." And then one guy said, "Yeah, I know your dad. And sometimes I was wanting to catch up with some of these guys. And Tom Hargrove, if you're listening, I'd like for you to call it. He was a president. He was a great president. Tom Hargrove, Mike Mazzot was a great president, and then we had Bill Andrews, African American, was the president of the local 1010. So I'd like to hear from and get with them sometime. It ought to be a day that all these steel workers come along with my area, or to get down and sit down. It wasn't. We didn't hear a black and white thing. We hear a united, we stand, divided, we fall. That's what it is. And
there
that's
you go.
We did.
All right.
Okay,
Hey, thanks, Ron.
You'll give me ample time.
All right.
Sure,
Thanks,
sure.
Ron. Have a great day. 845-1100 is the number to call. We have another caller.
We got one more.
We will go to that caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Well, the Northwest Indiana Empire Builders have many more transformational projects in mind with respect to rail. Do you realize that?
Okay, and again, I know it's April Fool's. Go ahead, Walt. I know you're not being facetious. It's or you are being facetious, but
no.
Go ahead.
Well, they want to build extend the West Corridor to Valparaiso and Lowell and Cedar Lake. That's part of the big plan.
Well, at the price that the 6 miles cost, I think it's highly unlikely. What I still don't understand, and it worked perfectly into the 90s. There was a train that ran from Chicago out to Valparaiso during rush hour,
right.
and it was very well used. It was very popular. It used to stop in Whiting, and you'd see dozens of people get off that train. And then all of a sudden, it was Visklosky who pushed the idea that to bolster the South Shore and to bolster the idea of adding additional track and additional locations, they had to basically pressure Amtrak to no longer have that run. So Amtrak discontinued that run, putting a lot of people in a difficult situation of having to drive every day. And in the case of the Whiting-Hammond Amtrak station, what a joke that is. They have a total of 2 trains a day that stop at that station now. Thank you very much, Pete Visklosky. And somebody just texted me, I don't know if it's true, but it says Pete Visklosky's moved to Virginia. So thanks so much for what you did.
So Pete didn't show up for the inauguration of this the West Corridor?
No, every source that I have, including Paul Goddard, says he did not. And again, he was the one who said this was going to be a game changer for Northwest Indiana. This was just absolutely, in our future. This was going to make a difference. And so, there you go. We have, we have the proof in the pudding because he didn't even show for the inaugural ride, if you will.
When they first started pushing that West Corridor thing, I dubbed it the $1 billion boondoggle. And old Pete got really frosted over that because he actually came on WJOB, and boy, he was furious. How dare they call us the $1 billion boondoggle? What's that? Blah, 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 blah. It's but there was a lot of lying done for these big projects. I mean, it's
well, the good news, there was a lot of lying involved, and the good news, Walt, is that we've got the bishop on at 7:00. Maybe you can give him absolution. I mean, I hate to joke about that, but the bottom line is you're absolutely right. There were so many lies that were fed to us about this South Shore extension. And, the one caller who said, you have to avoid the traffic jam from all the transit-oriented development. And my argument is transit-oriented development, take a look at the South Shore. If that was the case, why do the areas around the South Shore look the way they do? You drive through Gary, you drive through Hammond, you drive through East Chicago.
Yep.
I mean, there are a lot of nice areas in Hammond, and the mayor's done a great job in improving Hammond, but the area around the South Shore leaves a lot to be desired. East Chicago, Mayor Copeland's done a lot of good things in EC, but you don't see a lot of new development around the South Shore over there. You've got 2 gas stations. That's it. And, Gary, the same thing. So all these claims of it's going to bring all this new development, well, I haven't seen it. And I don't think the Miller part of Gary, the reason why Miller has grown and improved it has something to do with Lake Michigan and its closeness to the lake, as much as anything else other than promises that the South Shore is going to make a difference.
The lies went on with the double track project, and I stood nose to nose with Michael Nolan, who was the boss of the South Shore at the time, and I asked him point blank. I said, "Mr. Nolan," and he's from Chicago. He was involved with Metro there. I said, "Mr. Nolan, this is an area where the projects like this cost double the triple what they normally would or advertised. What are you going to do to keep it in line?" And he looked at me and he said, "All my projects have come in on time and under budget." Well, the $200 million plus double track actually came in closer to $600 million. That's what, 3 times? But in any case, it's when it comes to a big public construction project, it seems like the lies come out big time, and it's the way things are. And I wish I could have confidence that now that the West Corridor is done and the double track is done, that the talk about extension to other places is just talk. But I'm not that confident.
Well, again, there are some. Here, you want to talk about transformational project, one that I don't think is likely to happen. I still believe that we're getting used largely in negotiations by the Bears. But if the Bears were to locate in Hammond, that's a transformational project, right? I mean, that creates all kinds of change. Transformational development would be building a new automobile factory in Northwest Indiana. That's transformational. But laying down 6 miles of rail for a cost of $1.4 billion. I guess I'm missing it. I don't see that rush. Everybody says, again, the TOD, the transit-oriented development, you're going to see it. But when they point out other communities, they point to Illinois, and they point to communities like Elmhurst, for example. Well, I have a brother that lives in Elmhurst, has a very nice home there, and Elmhurst is growing, and it's a very nice community, largely because of its location off the Eisenhower Expressway to Chicago. The train station basically is a bit of an afterthought. It's not the major reason why Elmhurst is Elmhurst. Right. So people throw these things out all the time, and they say, well, look at this community and look how nice it is, and we're going to get the same, and because of the train. And it's kind of like, well, yeah, the train is there, but there's a lot of other things. And again, I still think Northwest Indiana really missed an opportunity. They could have enhanced that train that ran from Chicago to Valparaiso, and that probably would have been a whole lot cheaper. It was running on existing tracks. It worked very well. And then Pete Visklosky came in and put his pressure as congressman on Amtrak to eliminate all of those runs to and from Valparaiso and through Whiting-Hammond. And the Whiting-Hammond station, again, it's basically empty. It may as well be closed. I think if Amtrak ever looks at it, somebody's going to say, why is that facility open? Why do we have it manned? We only have 2 trains a day that stop there, and they're going in the wrong direction. You can't get to Chicago. You can get from Chicago. So I think that when it comes to rail, again, I'm not going to sit here and say let's shut down the South Shore by any means, but just improve the service that's on the existing line, and let's not try to add new lines as you started off the phone call with. That let's just worry about what we already have.
Did you work at the Museum of Science and Industry one time, or was that the Field Museum?
No, Museum of Science and Industry, absolutely.
Well, there was a nice piece on Fox News yesterday, and it was headlined, Women in Science at the Griffin Museum Science of Industry. And they noted
please don't call it the Griffin Museum of Science and Industry. That to me is a slap in the face of the Rosenwald family, who started the museum, who said the museum was there for the masses, it was there for the people, and they didn't want their name on it. And if anybody should have their name on it, it should be Rosenwald. And the Rosenwald family said absolutely not. And then Griffin leaves Chicago and kind of feels bad, says a lot of nasty things about Chicago, some of which is very accurate about the crime and the problems downtown. Mm-hmm. And he leaves to move to Miami, and he gives $40 million so he can stick his name on the Museum of Science and Industry. That was just wrong, but continue on.
Well, that's. I remember when he announced that he's going to move a big chunk of his business to Miami. You had people, the Chicago papers had columnists saying, well, don't let the door hit you in the backside on your way out. They were pretty nasty to him, too.
Yeah.
But this particular piece, the CEO, the lead scientist, and the person in charge of collections, all women. How about that? Could you have imagined that when you worked there?
When I worked there, of course, all the top positions were all male. But I'm not surprised. I think that again, as I've said many times before, I want the same for my daughter as I want for my son. With a few minor exceptions. I never wanted her to play football, and I never wanted my son to be homecoming queen. So, I think women have just as much ability as men when it comes to running operations, and I wish them all the very best. So, hey, with that, Walt, we've got to take a break. Thanks so much for the call. And with that, we're going to take a quick break. You're listening to the Morning Call on WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM. We'll be right back. And don't forget, coming up at the 7 o'clock hour, it is Bishop Robert McClory, the Bishop of the Diocese of Gary.
Life's biggest challenges don't come with a warning. When legal issues arise, whether it's a car accident, personal injury, criminal charge, or representing you before municipal boards, you need a trusted advocate on your side. At Westland & Bennett, we listen first because your story matters. We provide strategic, personalized legal solutions to protect your rights, your freedom, and your future. Peace of mind starts with a conversation. Call 219-440-7550 today for a free consultation.
Ennigenberg Roofing offers roof replacements, repairs, and new construction. CertainTeed Shingle Master certified, our goal is to treat every customer and project with respect, courtesy, and honesty. Serving Northwest Indiana for over 63 years, contact us for a free roof replacement estimate at 219-365-8879. Mention this ad and receive a free upgrade to CertainTeed Pro Shingles. Ennigenberg Roofing, 219-365-8879.
Indiana wants me.
Know a Hoosier serving in the military or living overseas? Indiana wants every eligible Hoosier to participate in our elections. Military and overseas voters can register and vote securely from anywhere in the world. Voting assistance for service members, families, and eligible Hoosiers is available now. Visit IndianaWantsYou.com or contact your county election office. And remember, Indiana wants you.
Message sponsored by your Indiana Secretary of State.
Indiana wants me.
Do you like to work with your hands, creating something from nothing? Then think about Laborers Local 41. You'll get 432 hours of apprenticeship training, all while earning a wage with benefits and incurring no student debt. You'll travel to different job sites, learn tons of skills, and in a lot of cases, be the first one on and the last one off a job site. It all starts at laborers41.com.
right, we're back. And, of course, this is Holy Week, folks, and everybody knows Easter, hopefully they know, Easter is this Sunday. There's no one better to have on the radio to talk about Easter and talk about things in general than Bishop Robert McClory, the Bishop of the Diocese of Gary. Good morning.
Good morning, Tom. This is a tremendous week to be here. We call it Holy Week because we have all kinds of special ceremonies and services, and it's a great opportunity for us to both celebrate, remember the passion, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus. And so for us living our daily lives, you know, there are times that we're feeling the passion and the suffering and the pain and saying, why, God, why? And then we can have a place to put that pain as we accompany Jesus as he goes to the cross, but then have hope for the resurrection as well. So it's a beautiful time of year. It's a time of renewal, repentance, and it's a time of growth for our local church. We, on Saturday evening, throughout, you know, all of the Diocese of Gary, the 4 counties that we have here in the region, we are going to be receiving into the church, that is, you know, Christians from other denominations becoming Catholics, and baptizing on that Saturday night, our highest numbers in 15 years. So,
yeah, I was going to bring that up this morning. And 845-1100, you're welcome to call in, and you can ask the bishop questions directly. But one of the questions that I had received the other day was if you could talk about why there is such a, and the way it was worded was why there's such a resurgence in membership in the Catholic Church. I'm not sure it's resurgence because I don't think these are people coming back, but nonetheless, there's a great deal of growth in the Catholic Church worldwide and especially in the United States.
Yeah, it's been remarkable. You know, I have a priest friend of mine actually from Vienna, and he mentioned that at the last Easter Vigil, this was going back a year ago, they had like something like 19 or 20 Muslims who were baptized as Christians. And so not only here in the United States, but worldwide, there's a committee actually in Paris that's looking into trying to answer the very question you've asked because they're seeing a growth. I think, and again, the data anecdotally and empirically is showing growth. So that's a positive thing. I think there was a generation that was raised in the faith, and maybe we kind of took it for granted, and it became a little bit part of our DNA, but some people drifted away. But the young generation, I admit, I kind of forget which ones are Gen X and Gen Z and millennials and all that. But I mean, you know, really those who are more like, you know, post 18 to about 34 years old, a lot of them never really were presented with the faith in a dynamic and beautiful way. And so for them, what I can sense is it's something of a rediscovery. And I think we live in an age in which there's a lot of relativism, there's a lot of confusion, and to encounter Jesus, to hear the gospel message, is life-changing. And then if you say, well, you know, gosh, this Jesus really is Lord, what does that mean for me? And to find out that he founded a church, and it continues to this day, I think there's kind of a clarity in the midst of confusion that is attractive to a lot of people, particularly some young people with whom I've spoken.
Yeah, and I notice it myself. I mean, my son and daughter fall into that age group, and my son, who is a local attorney now and practicing law in Hammond, and should point out to listeners that Bishop McClory, you're also an attorney.
That's right. I keep my bar membership up, but obviously I'm a non-practicing.
You're not right. You're not going to show up in the court representing anyone in the near
That's
future.
Right. That's right.
But you are a licensed attorney, and you know, I've noticed he and many of his friends. You see them regularly in church, and that age group. There's definitely an interest in coming back to the church, and again, the number that I saw, I believe it was from Reuters 2 days ago, said that the Catholic Church had surpassed 1.42 billion members.
Yes, worldwide, it's just under 18% of the worldwide population, so more or less one out of every five people on this planet are Catholics. And, you know, it's interesting, Tom, I was invited, I'm an alum, I'm a proud Hoosier, but I'm an alum of the University of Michigan Law School, and they found out that one of their alums was a bishop in the Catholic Law Students Association. So this was just about 2 weeks ago. They said, hey, would you come and give us a talk? And so I talked about my own experience in law school, having a roommate who was an atheist, who then, by the end of the year, decided maybe he was agnostic. Anyway, the point is, I thought I was just going to be speaking to the Catholic students there. But they put up the posters for it and said, this bishop is going to be here. And I had something like 5 or 6 atheists there, and they just wanted to know. They were hungry, and they said, in terms of, particularly in some legal areas, how they kind of really embraced the understanding of the church on certain issues. But they didn't come to the point of belief, but there was already a hunger there. You could tell they're asking questions. And this was not an event specifically intended for those, who are not Catholic. It was wide open, but that was very illuminative to me.
All right, so you just begged the question, so I have to ask it. Do you want to make a prediction on the Final Four?
Yes. In my bracket, in fact, one of our parishes asked if I would join their bracket, and so they're calling it Brackets with the Bishop. So yes, in my final, I had Michigan over Duke. So now my guess is it will be Michigan over Connecticut.
All right, there we go. So UConn falls to Michigan. We've got some callers, so let's go to those callers. Good morning. You're on the air with Bishop McClory.
Hi, Bishop. Hi, Tom. Dave.
Yes, Dave.
A question in regards to the numbers increasing in the church, which is great. And I've been in the logistics and transportation industry a long time. And the question, everything's in the numbers. Do you equate also COVID, right? Anymore, it's pre- and post-COVID numbers. And I know we're getting 4 years out of the COVID, of COVID. And my girlfriend being a teacher, we think about 5, 6, and 7-year-old kids that had no social interaction for a couple years, and now do you bring the COVID, again, I know it's 2026, but the COVID factor at all, is this figured in your numbers that people are finally coming back and being comfortable and getting back in church?
That's really a great
question.
Yeah, excellent. That's a great question. So for myself, this is seared in my memory. For those who are aware, I was ordained and installed as the Bishop of Gary on February 11th, the Feast of Our Lady of Lourdes, 2020. And so I came here, and within 5 weeks, suddenly COVID was upon us. And we really did track those numbers just to see how we were doing. And those, 2+ years were indeed years in which people were not congregating together. Some communities were really devastated. I've spoken to some of my, Protestant pastors as well as to how they navigated it. And so what we would see is, when I said we're the highest in 15 years, that goes back to the pre-COVID numbers. So we seem to have more than recovered in terms of those coming into the church. However, what is the effect of those who experienced COVID in a very challenging way? What was interesting is I kind of thought when we came out of COVID that we might actually see the more elderly population stay away because they were most at risk, and younger and presumably healthier folks would come back. The initial post-COVID, it was not exactly that. The older members of the community, who are probably the most loyal, who have it most hardwired into them for many years, they came back pretty quickly. And it was the younger ones that seemed to take a little bit longer. So we seem to have stabilized from that. I don't want to overstate it because there's still many people that we're not seeing.
Sure.
But, there's also that effect, and you mentioned, I think your wife as your girlfriend as a teacher. Certainly, we could have a whole other conversation about the effect upon young people. And I know educators who say, literally, I've gone, to schools and so these are COVID kids. And so what do you mean by that? And there can be a real reserve. Some of the kids even, and I don't need to get into like all the masking issues. I'm just saying beyond the sort of health prescription that we should do that, some of the kids, it seemed to be a bit of a social protection mechanism, like because they didn't have to show their face. I mean, you had all these kind of things going on. So I do think we haven't sufficiently reflected on all the implications of COVID. And I had a priest friend of mine who does a lot of medical ethics and so on. He said, after things like whatever, 9/11, we had the 9/11 commission. After, the Kennedy assassination, we had, the Warren Commission. But, we kind of haven't really sorted through all the implications of COVID. So I think you're onto something there. I think that for some people that were isolated, the hunger for community was pronounced, and they're coming back. But the numbers, when we say, the highest in 15 years, that would precede the era of COVID.
Yeah, that's great numbers. I go to St. Mary's of the Lake in Gary.
Yeah.
And now we're all going through the consolidation right now too,
Sure.
which is in itself traumatic to a lot of parishioners. But hey, this too will pass and everything will be fine. And it's interesting about the senior numbers. The only thing I could think of, just being a truck driver, that the seniors are the most loyal to the church.
Yeah,
and that's why you're and their numbers are coming back.
That's what I would have thought. Yeah.
Yeah, David. In fact, I get the aerial view at St. John the Baptist every week since I'm an usher and I stand in back and I can see over everybody's head. And one thing I've noticed is the seniors came back very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Younger people came in. The group that actually I've not seen in large numbers the way I used to is my own age group, the baby boomers. The boomers, the older baby boomers, yes, but the younger baby boomers, and if you look at the baby boomer generation, the majority of them were actually born in the late 50s, early 60s, and you're not seeing as many of those individuals, and then the generation right after mine, you're not seeing some of those people.
Well, I think for some, the challenge, the opportunity for us as a church, for us as believers, is to really represent the joy of the gospel, that Jesus loves us, that he came to reconcile us with God the Father. We don't have to be perfect to be Christians. We just have to be those who seek the mercy of Jesus, that there's a better way to live, that there's hope for the future, that you have an eternal destiny. And our love for God, while it's certainly an individual expression and our, receiving Jesus sacramentally and in our hearts as our Lord, then impels us to share that with other people. And so, not just in proclaiming the gospel, which we're called to do, but also acts of service and love and mercy. And so for some, their view of the church, even as, kind of baptized Catholics, needs to be refreshed. It was St. John Paul II who the first time talked about baptized non-believers. The church used to say, well, if you got somebody to baptism, well, then not end of story, but okay, well, now they're in the church. And St. John Paul II began to refer to baptized non-believers, those who are baptized, but they really aren't believers. And so sometimes you call that the new evangelization. But when the gospel is proclaimed with clarity, the essentials of it, people seem to be responding. They do respond and will.
Hey, thanks so much for the call, Dave. We've got additional
David.
callers.
Hey, thank you.
All right, good morning. We have another caller. Good morning, you're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Tom.
Yes, good morning.
Hi, good morning. I apologize. I don't mean to take away from your time, Bishop, but I had to call in, Tom. This is not an April Fool's thing. It appears that the train crossing, the gates are down on Ridge Road. I just got directed onto Manor Avenue by some construction people. So I don't know if they've got it straightened out, but it's not a joke. It's not an April Fool's thing like my earlier call.
All right.
It would appear that there are some issues.
Yeah,
and Bishop, I apologize for taking away your time this morning.
This is a public service announcement.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Maybe they got it straightened out, but there were some construction guys, and I was eastbound on Ridge, and they were directing cars onto Manor Avenue because the gates were down, and there was considerable cars behind me, and you could see to the other side. So again, Bishop, I apologize for taking up some of your time this morning. Perhaps you could offer up a prayer for those running the South Shore,
those
because
stuck in traffic.
It appears they need prayer.
All right,
so, thank you.
You got them.
All right, thanks so much. Thanks so much for the call. Again, gates are stuck down on Ridge Road, right by the new South Shore Westlake corridor. So be careful over there. They're detouring traffic, and hopefully they'll get it fixed pretty quickly. We've got another caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hey, it's great to hear of more people heading out to church, particularly the the church founded by Jesus Christ, as opposed to the one who's wreaking havoc on the world, called Islam, that fake religion. But I'd like to ask the bishop, what is your opinion of the Pope basically eviscerating the United States and Israel for trying to rid the world of the religion of peace of Islam over in Iran, who just wiped out 40,000 people, cold blood murdered 40,000 people, and this Pope is criticizing the people who are trying to rid the world of terrorism. I mean, I think it's appalling. I'll hang up and listen to my answer, or your answer. Excuse me.
All right, thank you.
Sure, thanks so much. So we look to the world that God intends for us to have, and we look to our eternal destiny in which the lion and the lamb will be together. The adder's lair, one will still be at peace. And so the sort of what is the end goal? We know that violence came into the world through Cain and Abel. It was not part of God's plan. And so we need a prophetic witness to remind us what the world should be. And so I think it's important for us to keep that in mind. There have been some great leaders in the church. The church does not embrace pacifism, but somebody like Dorothy Day and others would say, we are simply called to use other means to avoid that violence. And so one is the question kind of like, what is God's perfect plan for us? And God's perfect plan is indeed a plan of peace and nonviolence. And so we should always work towards that. The church does have what's called a just war tradition. I won't go into all the nuances of it, but certainly evil needs to be eradicated. Evil needs to be, confronted. The means that we use it, the ancillary damages to others, the lives of those who can be affected in such a situation are always things we need to be sensitive to. So I think what you have always seen, and this is not something new to Pope Leo, to Pope Francis, to Pope Benedict, to Pope John Paul II, and prior, is that the church has always been a consistent voice in favor of peace. And so that's really what's being articulated. The Holy Father did quote a passage about those with blood on their hands, it's a sobering passage, but it's certainly in the Bible. And so in that regard, those who have to make decisions about how to, defend our country, defend our world from threats, they have to make those before God, and they have to really seek the Lord's guidance in that regard. But I think you've always seen the church really as a voice of promoting peace. And somebody could say that's Pollyannish, that's living in a world that isn't as it is. But that's always our calling. It's always our calling to say, this isn't the way things should be. And so how can we, get ourselves to that point?
So it's a great question, though, because there are some contradictions. I mean, you look at some of the greatest saints and leaders of not only Catholicism, but of Christianity, and really even going back to Judeo times. I mean, Moses, David. There are a lot of very celebrated leaders in our religion, in the origins of our religion, who basically did lead wars and battles, and talked about the righteousness of battles. So there's sometimes, I think, for a lot of us, there is some contradiction. I mean, Mad Mac, of course, brought up a great question, and I don't expect the bishop, the Pope, to come out and say, let's go drop bombs on somebody. I mean, that's a rarity. Even during World War II, the Pope had basically a lot of reason to stay pretty silent, including the fact that Rome was occupied. But there's been some limitations, and I understand that. But at the same time, there's also some contradictions.
Yeah, well, I think the figure, and we look to the New Testament and Christ Himself as fulfilling the Old Testament. St. John Chrysostom said, the Old Testament it's almost like the outline of a painting. So you have the kind of the chalk outline, and then with the New Testament, with Jesus, it's suddenly filled in and illuminated and brought forward in its vibrancy. So I think, there's no better time to reflect on the Christian response and the Christian witness than during Holy Week, because, Pilate was trying to goat Jesus into, doing anything to kind of get himself off the hook, and Jesus was unjustly put to death. But the command of Jesus is that of turning the other cheek. It doesn't mean that there aren't rights of appropriate rights of self-defense, but his witness transcended that of the Old Testament, and so we need to take that very seriously. It, certainly it is something in a lot of teachings that we have to kind of grapple with and say, well, how do we apply this? Like I said, there are the just war traditions, which talk about proportionality, which talk about legitimate defense, which talk about, what are the objectives and so on. And we could kind of go through that with, but I can't put myself in the mind of Pope Leo. But the notion of the witness of Christ is very compelling. I remember Cardinal George, who, may he rest in peace, he was really just an extraordinary figure, the former Archbishop of Chicago.
In fact, I got to meet him in person. He before you became Bishop of Gary, he was here for a fundraiser for the Carmelite Home for its 100th anniversary. And it was amazing. It was just an amazing time.
And so, it was interesting. I mentioned earlier Dorothy Day, who was a very had an extraordinary life history, whose cause for canonization is up. She was a pacifist, and so her cause, I was an observer at the time, I wasn't a bishop, but her cause was being presented, and so if she's going to advance, the bishops of the United States would have to weigh in on that. Like, would we advance her for further consideration for sainthood? And Cardinal George went up there and he said, Dorothy Day was a pacifist. The church doesn't teach that here and now we all need to be pacifists, but we need some pacifists to challenge us, to remind us that something's really messed up with this world, that this isn't normal. And so I guess what I'm trying to articulate is I think we need voices who will shockingly remind us that there should be a better way to live, a better way to love. And we're not called to be pacifist, but I think some are. Some are called to give witness to that. And I think, not having spoken to him, but I think Pope Leo, I don't want to call him a pacifist per se, but I think he's giving witness to that. He's reminding us. And so,
which is a balance again. So he's kind of balancing the view that, okay, and again, I think it would be very hard for the Pope, with some rare exceptions, to come out and basically say killing others is justified. I mean, again, there are the just wars, but in general, it's a little hard to ask the leader of the Catholic Church, 1.4 billion people, to say go out and go out and drop bombs on somebody. So I get that part. But.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I mean, we should be praying for our troops, for the men and women who are putting their lives in harm's way for us. Pray for those who are experiencing the effects of this war, but we can, in a certain sense, it's easy for us to sit here in the studio and kind of absorb this a bit from afar. Right. I remember my father. He was really in the last year of his life. He was honored for Memorial Day, and he was a Grand Marshal in my hometown Memorial Day parade. And I remember the reporter, my dad's, like 93 or something at the time. And the reporter said, "Do you think people are more or less patriotic these days?" And I thought, well, how's my dad going to answer this? Because if he says, we're more patriotic, I could say, well, come on, look at World War II. Wasn't it better? And if he says, if they're less patriotic, it's going to be like, well, you're just a crotchety old man who, doesn't think we're doing okay. And this is the way he answered it. He says, well, I think today people appreciate even more the sacrifice that the men and women serving the armed forces have made. And they appreciate even more the sacrifices that our men and women make. And I thought, well, that was brilliant, because that's really true. We can now, through those who we know who are in the military, and as we see the consequences of it, I think we can have an appreciation for our men and women in the armed forces. So transcending from, the issue of the war, I think it is important for us to pray for those who said, I'm going to serve for a greater good, that the Lord protect them, bless them, guide them, and give them right judgment.
All right. We're going to be right back. Again, special guest, Bishop Robert McClory, Diocese of Gary. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Morning Show on WJOB 1230 M, 104.7 FM.
For over 100 years, Roofers Local 26 has been keeping Northwest Indiana dry and safe. Since 1919, our highly trained members have built a reputation for skills, safety, and reliability. With a 4-year apprenticeship and certifications in OSHA safety, first aid, and CPR, we deliver quality you can trust. When you need roofing done right, choose Roofers Local 26, protecting what matters most for over a century. For more information, visit www.roofers26.com.
Are you sausage curious?
Who's ready for Polish?
Big Frank Sausage has the very best Polish food in the region.
You had a mouthful of Big Frank sausage?
We have a full bar, dine-in, carry-out, delivery, and catering available.
I've had a mouthful of Big Frank sausage.
I've got a mouthful of Big Frank sausage.
219-378-9556. Smacznego i na zdrowie.
Who's ready for Polish?
It's the simplest expression. The smallest thing that changes everything. A smile. So easy. A smile lights it up. Apologizes. And welcomes unconditionally. Because the shortest distance between two people is a smile.
Thank you.
Dragon Van Til, where making life easier starts with a smile.
IBEW Local 697 electrical contractors bring the highest standard of electrical work to Lake County homes, schools, and businesses. From everyday fixes to once-in-a-lifetime builds, we don't just get the job done, we get it done right and up to the highest safety standards. When you need electrical work, hire the professionals who power Indiana. Powering Indiana, Lake County, bringing excellence to the job, creating a brighter future for our community.
All right, folks, we're back. And again, special guest this morning, Holy Week. We've got Bishop Robert McClory here in the studios taking calls. And we're going to go back to the calls and back to the discussion with the bishop right after we do traffic and weather. And just an update on traffic. We haven't heard any different. That the gates, there are some gate problems on Ridge Road where the new South Shore track crosses. So be careful of that area. They're detouring people around to Manor So hopefully that gets cleared up pretty quickly. Looking at Northwest Indiana, we're in great shape, folks. I-65, 8094, the Indiana Toll Road and Klein Avenue are in great shape. And across the line in Illinois, starting to see traffic build at the north end of the Bishop Ford and I-57 going into the Ryan. The Ryan is looking like it's having its usual problems, and that's always a concern because it can build very quickly. The backup right now is right down to about 43rd, and it is a solid backup now into the circle. So be careful there. Lakeshore Drive looks really good this morning yet. Looking at the Stevenson, the Eisenhower, and the Kennedy, all are becoming pretty bad traffic backups. 294 still your best bet to get around the city and get up to O'Hare. With that, let's go to weather.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 39 degrees with highs of 45 and lows of 43. It's going to be breezy and cooler with periods of rain, and then breezy again this evening with a couple of showers and a thunderstorm. And then tomorrow on Thursday, we'll be having highs of 73 and lows of 52. It's going to be cloudy, windy, and warmer with a couple of showers and a heavy thunderstorm. And then Friday, we'll be having highs of 65 and lows of 54 with variable cloudiness.
All right, there you have it, traffic and weather. And we're back with the Bishop. And there are a lot of things going on this week, and you just mentioned one of them that you wanted to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. So Holy Week is a really special time. We'll have what's called the Chrism Mass at the Cathedral tomorrow at 10:30 a.m., which is a really beautiful celebration. All of the faithful around the diocese, all the priests are there. We have the blessing of the oils that will be used, the consecration of the oils for the coming year. So that's tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. at the Cathedral of the Holy Angels in Gary. And then, at all the local parishes, of course, there's a Mass of the Lord's Supper, which is Holy Thursday evening. You'd have to check your local parish. It's usually about 7 p.m. It's a beautiful liturgy. It includes, for the 12 that are chosen, a washing of the feet in replication of what Jesus did the night before he suffered and died for us. And then there's a procession that does follow of the Blessed Sacrament, the Holy Eucharist, taking it to a place of prayer and repose. So there's a lot of additional things. But certainly Good Friday is a special day, and there are services at every parish in the diocese. But one that is really of national interest would be at the Shrine of Christ's Passion, which is in St. John, Indiana, in the city or the township of St. John's. And that is at 12 noon. And that is, if you've never been to the Shrine of Christ's Passion, it's a very worthy and fitting place to come because there are life-size, we could call them Stations of the Cross, but really bronze sculptures showing not just the Passion of Christ, but even other elements prior to the Passion and leading also into the resurrection. But we pray that what are called the Stations of the Cross. So there are 14 markers with beautiful statues, all of bronze, where we enter into that more deeply. So I have found, Tom, that this has been among really the most significant public expressions of the faith year-round that we have in Indiana. So it is broadcast nationally. I don't want to give your competitors, too much airtime, but Relevant Radio Online broadcasts it, so you can.
It truly is a remarkable place to go, and the Schilling family certainly have played a very significant role in the development.
Yeah.
And you're right. It's nationally known. I've had people when I was down in Florida. I had a gentleman that I was talking to at my daily visit to the dog park with the dogs, and we were talking about where I was from, and he said to me, "Oh, there's the shrine." Yeah. And at first I'm thinking the shrine, which shrine are you talking about? And then as soon as he started talking about it, it's like, I know exactly what you're talking about, and it's off of US 41. So that's this Friday at 12 noon.
And we have, come one, come all, we literally have thousands of people that come out for this. And, it's a great opportunity. I like seeing a lot of families. There's a kind of a real diverse expression, not just from Indiana, but from Illinois. I know people that have said, they drove 5 hours to come to this. It's beautiful, and you're outside, and you're walking, and you're praying, and you're viewing, and so it gives you just a real beautiful expression. But we have certainly, several thousand people that come, and it's a beautiful event.
All right, and we've got another caller, so let's go to the caller. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Tom. How are you? And good morning, Bishop. It's an honor to speak with you this morning.
Thank you.
I have a two-part question, one for you, Bishop, and one for you, Tom. It's about the same topic. Bishop McClory, over the last several months, there's been a lot of news stories, information now about public corruption around social programs, children with autism and hospice care and things like that. And I wanted to know what your thoughts were on that type of public corruption. And then second part, Tom, the new U.S. Treasury program that allows whistleblowers to collect 10 to 30% of the monetary penalty if successfully, with successful enforcement action. So just curious about what your thoughts are on how that will counteract or end all this corruption.
Sure.
I'll hang up and let you answer.
All right, Bishop.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. Certainly any betrayal of the entrustment of public funds that are supposed to be for the common good is to obviously be rejected. I don't want to draw too strong a parallel, but certainly in this week, the readings that we have during Holy Week, even before we get to Holy Thursday and Good Friday, do talk about Judas. And Judas didn't just betray Jesus, but he was responsible for the funds. I mean, it's very clear in the scriptures, like he was responsible for this. And there were times, that he even said when the woman broke the alabaster container of perfumed oil and placed them on Jesus' feet, he says, "Oh, that money could have gone to the poor." And people say, well, he really wasn't talking about. He said he was talking about the poor, but he sort of had some avarice for these funds. And so, we do look at those who are entrusted with resources and that they would use them for the public good for which they're intended. And, certainly whatever checks and balances we need to ensure that all need to be embraced. The human heart can be drawn towards, towards the love of money. And, we certainly know you can't serve both God and mammon. And that means, when it comes to your material resources to money, you have a choice to make. And so the greater good is God, and to turn away from any form of theft, public corruption, because those are for the greater good, and those have been entrusted for a purpose. And so it's troubling when we hear these things. However, it's helpful to see the world as it is, not as we wish it would be. And so my hope when there are revelations like this, anything that's, scandal is not just that something bad. Scandal means that when you hear about it, you are more likely, having been aware of that, to sin yourself, So right. The bad response would be to say there's public corruption. Maybe I can get away with it too. The good reaction is to say, I never want to do that. And so scandal means that somebody who might not otherwise be drawn to doing it might say, hey, maybe I'll do that even though I know it's wrong. And so we need to refute that.
Well, I want to answer the question. I think the idea of, basically offering some sort of a reward to whistleblowers, although you would wish and hope, I personally, that people would do the right thing because they felt that public corruption was wrong. At its core, the idea of sharing, some sort of a reward for pointing out waste. I think in this day and age, it's probably not a bad thing. We want to stop the waste. I don't know to what level that goes. I mean, if you're talking about, they're saying $1 billion of waste, for example, just in Minnesota. And if you're going to get 20%, that's $200 million. I think that's a little excessive. But correct me if I'm wrong. I'm going to have you put your attorney hat on for a minute, but the federal government actually has provided those kinds of incentives for many years, haven't they? I mean, there have always been some sort of incentives for basically weeding out corruption.
I don't know that I can attest to the incentives for it, but there certainly is whistleblower protection,
right?
Which would be that if you legitimately bring forth some violation that needs to be publicly disclosed or reported to authorities, that you cannot be adversely treated because of that. There's certain parameters for it. But I have to say, I hadn't really listened. I hadn't tracked what the caller mentioned in terms of this particular new incentive. But generally, the first has been, well, if you report, you shouldn't be treated disfavorably because of that. It's typically in the employment context, not just sort of a general, I reported, but that I'm not sure about. So.
And I'm going to throw one, and we've got callers, but I've got to throw in a quick question for you. So Scott Miller, good friend of mine, folks know he's running for county council. In fact, he's going to be on next Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
But he sent me a very interesting question to pose to you, which is sneaking candy into a movie theater. So if you sneak candy into a movie theater, it's wrong. Is it a sin?
Well, here's my question. I presume, do movie theaters not allow any of those private things?
So they block. Generally, it says you can't bring in your own candy. So the question is, of course, they're doing it because they want to maximize their profits. So the question is it a sin if you don't follow the requests and the directions of the movie theater?
So, if one were to come into the confession, the factors that you look at is, kind of, is it grave matter or kind of the seriousness of the action? The other then is whether the person knew it was serious or wrong. And then the third is, did they fully consent to it? So I'm really going kind of moral theologian here on it. It's a legitimate right of the proprietor to have those requirements. And so therefore to knowingly violate those would be to kind of act contrary to the contract that you've entered into going to the establishment. And so, whether it's the most serious, then it's not a grave matter as just not knowing other factors. But yeah, it's something you shouldn't do if that's the way they've set it up. Sometimes, to be honest, it's like, sometimes you're walking in and you say, well, I got this. Is this okay? Sometimes people say, well, that's all right. You can go in. And so sometimes to ease your conscience, you could just say that.
So it's really a debate of conscience is what it really is.
Well, what I mean is I would say it's a very legitimate parameter for entering into someone else's establishment for them to say, here's what you can and can't do. And so to bring that in would be to violate that, that norm, that contract, and if you're knowingly doing it. And I mean, I even asked you right off the bat, I'm like, can you not do that? I mean, there's some places where they seem to do that. Okay, so I'll tell you, somebody sent me, I'm a big one for packing lists, and I was going south, and somebody on this packing list it said, did you know there are these, they look like they're sunscreen tubes, but you actually open them up and they're flasks that you can put in, let's say, your beverage of choice. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to these extreme things to make it look like sunscreen, but really you're bringing in alcohol or something else.
Yeah, and Jed Dietelo would never know about those. 845-1100. We've got additional callers, so let's go to the callers. Good morning. You're on the air.
Yeah. Hi guys. Hello, Bishop. I had a question. It's in my way of feeling about this whole thing. I'm in my 7th decade of life already, and when I look at what's been happening in our culture, our country, it seems like we've had failings by our leadership in this country. Number one's the politicians. Number two is the courts, and number three is the church. The way our culture is going in this country is not going in a good direction. And I tend to feel that 501c3 that the church has to operate under is sort of muting the church's thoughts on what is happening in our culture. one of the big weaknesses that I feel is going on in the leadership of the church is a failure to address what's obviously, the things that are actually hurting our culture and actually driving us down toward, not in a good direction at all. A pastor is supposed to be the shepherd of his flock. And I feel like we are getting nothing but silence from the church on a lot of these different issues of what's going on with the little children, the debasement of their being able to grow up in a society that's doesn't have designs on them. A lot of other issues too, but it seems like the church doesn't have much to say about any of this. And I tend to feel it's due to 50c3. But it is sad. To me, faith is a whole lot different. Faith is key to salvation through Jesus Christ. Churches that's a human institution, and I feel that the church has actually let down their flocks when it comes to actually addressing the things that need to be addressed by a church. And I think it was a whole lot different, I think, maybe a century or so ago than it is now due to 50c3. What can you tell us about your attitude toward
All right, we're gonna ask you to hang up and let the bishop answer. Thanks so much.
Okay.
Certainly,
Sure.
I completely agree that our culture, we are living in an era beyond Christendom. We are in a new apostolic age, and by that I mean the notion that everyone has been essentially raised in a fundamentally Christian culture, I'll say in the West, that it's being passed on, that the institutional supports are there, that you essentially have a predominantly Christian, Judeo-Christian culture that's gone. And so we are really in a new age of almost needing to, not almost, but needing to think of ourselves in the early church, not presuming anyone accepts or believes what we do in terms of the truths of the faith and the salvific role of Jesus Christ, but also the implications of that in terms of how we should live, how we should treat each other, and how we should transform the culture. So it's incumbent upon all of us, and certainly we church leaders have responsibility to lead and guide, but the culture is formed by all the members of the faithful. And so sometimes there's a tendency to look at, for example, and say the church, and even if somebody's a baptized Christian, a baptized Catholic, by the church they mean this thing that's something other than themselves. So when it comes to things like passing legislation, running for office, that really is left legitimately to the laity. When it comes to addressing issues, absolutely right that the church needs to articulate the Christian vision on the pressing moral issues of the day. But the actual implementation of those, we're a church where the ministers can't even run for office, and we're prohibited from doing so because our role is something different. But I do think we live in a culture that people need to know the truths of the faith and the implications of that. There are people who don't listen to the church because they just hear our kind of our moral teachings, and they say, well, here's why I agree or disagree with that. But if they really come to know Christ, if they really come to know that they are created in the image and likeness of God, and there are implications of that as to how you should live and how you should treat others, and you see it flowing from that relationship with God, then it really internalizes and sticks. So we have two things. One is, how do we draw people back to that fundamental relationship with Jesus Christ? And for those who are there, how do we shape and form them and say, well, if you're a Christian, if you're a Catholic Christian, this means that we have, there's a better way to live, and that means living in accord with the commandments that God has given us. And those commandments are for our good so that we can thrive.
All right, we've got some more callers. Good morning, you're on the air. Good morning.
Yeah, this goes back a few years. Tom Hanks made a movie based on a book that was blatantly anti-Catholic, and they made it into a movie. And the thing that baffled me was that we heard almost nothing out of the Roman Catholic hierarchy about this.
You're talking about the Da Vinci Code,
mainly
right?
Da Vinci Code, exactly. Any case, it was mainly Protestants and particularly evangelical Protestants that went public to attack this movie that was just total nonsense, and for its anti-Catholic agenda, but implicitly Christian. Why were the hierarchy of the Roman Catholic Church silent about this horrible movie that was just total baloney?
Yeah, actually, I would dispute that the Catholic Church did not respond. There were, if not newsprint at the time, because now we're in a digital age. There were any number of thoughtful commentaries, guides to counteract that. I mean, there were institutions that book savaged unfairly. They had an albino monk from an organization that doesn't even have monks like that. I mean, they had all of its layers were just fallacious. And so, whether or not you heard those voices, whether in your own perception it was solely, our evangelical or Protestant brothers and sisters responding, I'm not sure. But you are right. And that was a cultural tidal wave. And there are some people who forever seemingly were seduced into believing the falsities of that. And, but definitely in its day, it was almost like a tidal wave. That book was number one for ages. They turned it into a movie. And, I'll say it was completely erroneous in its presuppositions, in its conclusions. It was not based on historical evidence. It was a work of fantasy. Nope. And people took it like it was, in fact, the gospel, which it is not.
But isn't this? It brings up 2 points. I mean, there was also the movie about the JFK assassination, which was pure fantasy and fictitious, but people believed it to be true. And so that's one of the problems with art sometimes, that people believe art to be based on fact, and it isn't. And the other is that I think it also is a commentary on the news media, because you're right, there were plenty of people that were speaking out over the Da Vinci Code. Mm-hmm. In fact, you brought up Cardinal George. Cardinal George was one of those people who spoke out repeatedly against it, yet he got very little coverage over what he was saying, and it was kind of that way amongst the entire Catholic Church, at least in the United States. There were plenty of bishops and cardinals that were speaking out against it, saying this is wrong, this is not accurate at all. But the news media, of course, is also driven by the entertainment industry, and it was a big runaway hit movie and book.
Well, even one, for example, that might be a little bit more innocuous, and I will tell you, I haven't watched it, but I know the basic narrative. There was a movie a couple years ago called The Two Popes. Tremendous actors. It was considered a moving portrayal, and it from some Catholics, well-intentioned believers, they enjoyed the story, and they thought this narrative actually occurred, which was that theoretically the Pope Francis went to, before he was Pope, he went to Pope Benedict and said, I'm thinking about resigning my office, and instead, Pope Benedict himself decides to resign from office because he's heard from Cardinal Bergoglio. I mean, they never met, that conversation was never held, but good, because it's a dramatic portrayal. Now, not to go too off tangent, but in this age of AI, in this age of deepfakes, I mean, just get ready for the onslaught of further confusion, as even our ability to not just think, well, this is a work of fiction and I want to believe it, but some things are going to be presented as fact. So it's the brave new world, and it's going to get even more challenging.
So we've got 2 more callers, but I'm just going to give a heads up because I know Jed's listening. I'm going to ask you about entertainment. I told you before I'm going to ask you about this. I'm going to ask you about Monty Python in a little bit. So before we're done, I'm going to ask you about Monty Python. Right. But we're going to go back to the callers. So good morning. You're on the air with the Bishop.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Good morning, Bishop.
Good morning.
Could you clarify for us the Pope's stance on white Christian nationalism and the American First doctrine, whether or not and how it isn't compatible with the Catholic teaching or Christianity for that matter? And one last sub-question to that. Is the gospel still being, or the center focus in the church? I mean, we have a lot of doctrines and this and that and this kind of thing, that kind of thing. But is the gospel still the central message of the Christian church or the Catholic Church in your estimation? Thank you.
Sure.
All right. Thanks for the call.
Thank you for that. So the church teaches, and this is expressed in the Declaration on Religious Liberty, that a society should advance and allow free expression of religion, that the state should not determine the religious beliefs of its people, both as a matter of kind of governmental structure that they shouldn't impose, and also that you really can never impose a faith because it's got to be somebody choosing and embracing that. Can the values that we embrace infuse what we do in our governmental relations? Absolutely. So there's no doubt that we should be informed by our faith and be able to make sure that there are appropriate ways that the faith can be expressed and lived, and that we don't have a neutral, completely devoid public square without any religious expression. But the question is, do we have a government that's explicitly sectarian? When it comes to the imposition of faith upon the citizenry, the church says that needs to be the free choice of those who are involved. So to my knowledge, I don't know that Pope Leo has explicitly addressed the term Christian nationalism, but we bring our faith to the public square, but we don't impose it upon others, but we should be given the opportunity to freely express it. But I will tell you, amen to your second question, we need to have, in this age of confusion, a core understanding of the gospel message. And really, it's a great segue as our time is coming a little bit close to an end, that the core of the gospel is this. God created a perfect world out of love. We were blessed to be created as an expression of his love. God wasn't bored. He wasn't lonely. He created us. And he gave us this perfect world. And our forebears, in the garden, said thanks but no thanks, said we're going to do it on our own. It's called the original sin. And so kind of corruption entered the world. And we began to say, how can I get myself out of this mix? There's what I want to do, but I'm not doing. We have violence, we have pain. And ultimately, God kept in love with us. He gave us the commandments. He entered into a covenant with us. He sent us the prophets, and we disobeyed, and we didn't listen, and we couldn't fix ourselves. And ultimately, he sent his only son to live the law perfectly, which we could never do, to make perfect, we call it atonement, his sacrifice on the cross. And so he lived the perfect life. He was the Son of God. He clearly revealed himself as that, and he rose again. So now we can live our lives in light of the love of Christ, in light of his mercy. We can receive and accept that love right now and live in peace and hope and joy, not without pain of any kind, but there's a beauty in saying, I've been rescued. I've been rescued by Jesus Christ. And so now I can live in light of that. And so my goal is not just to get to heaven, but to bring as many people with me, and right here, right now, let other people know the love of Christ. But it's not about us. It's about Jesus Christ. And that gospel-centric focus is what's necessary, and all the rest makes sense in light of that. So we sometimes call it the charisma. That's the big fancy word. It's like, what's the core of the gospel?
Let's take one more caller,
and then your final question.
I'm going to ask my final question,
Okay.
and Jed's going to fall off his chair. So we'll take this call. Go ahead. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hi, good morning, Your Excellency. Genesis 1, 6, and 7 states, "And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. And God made the firmament, and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so." The present online debate that I'm hearing in Mass is, if God explicitly placed a solid barrier to keep the waters above and out, as Artemis II launches today, April 1st, 2026, and there is no dome and no waters above according to NASA, does that mean this specific part of the Bible could be a mistake? And as a Christian, at this point, is NASA claiming the ability to have broken through this firmament and kind of constructed their own Tower of Babel? And who do I trust as a Christian?
So thank you for the question. The reality is that the Bible is without error in what it teaches us for our salvation. And so how to understand Genesis in its literal and its literary approach is that what we learn from the book of Genesis is the creative, loving action of God who created the world out of love. And so the nuances of scientific exploration don't need to be contrary to that. And so I don't see there as being kind of a distinction. We know no matter where in the cosmos, no matter where in the universe, there is one Savior, there is one incarnation. It was Jesus Christ who suffered and died for us. And so that particular passage in the book of Genesis teaches us many things, but it wouldn't be contrary to the scriptures to be able to continue to explore the created world as God has given us.
All right. Thank you so much. All right. Now I've got to ask this question. There was, growing up, my love of stupid movies and stupid entertainment largely comes from Monty Python. Okay. And there was a skit in the old Monty Python television show on PBS when I was a kid called The Bishop. And the bishop basically, for listeners and for your edification, the bishop basically was the bishop of the Church of England. Okay. So not a Roman Catholic bishop, but he also is in the skit. He is depicted as a crime fighter. So it's kind of like Avengers meets 007.
I love it.
And so the question was to ask you, whether you have ever seen the skit The Bishop from Monty Python.
I wish I could say I have seen some Monty Python. I have not seen The Bishop, but I can tell you I seem to recall, different times where they're attired in, cassocks and they've got kind of the wide brim hat and other things. So I do see these like religious characters in Monty Python. I wish I could tell you yes, but on that one I have not. So it'll have to be, maybe I'll have to look it up on YouTube or something like that.
It's about 4 minutes long. I'm not sure that it's worth your while, but it's comical, and I guess part of the reason why I bring it up though too is that at times I've always thought of the Catholic Church, and of course you think of great reverence and all the carryings on, but I've also realized too that you included, being the bishop, that you still have a sense of humor. There are still some things that are pretty funny, and when we were talking off the air, you said you've seen some other Monty Python bits and thought they were pretty funny.
Yeah, no, I've seen Spamalot. I've seen the Holy Grail. It's been a while since I've seen all of that. But yeah, we need to laugh. We need to know that, being a Christian is a great way to live. You can laugh, you can have fun, you can just live what we call the joy of the gospel. And, while I'm not a crime fighter, this is a topic for perhaps another time, but, we are fighting, as we say, as another priest, Father John Riccardo, said, the enemy is the enemy. We do have a devil who wants us to be defeated and who wants us to be deflated. And so we can make enemies out of people in this planet, but, the enemy is the enemy. And we're called to ensure that we're fighting the good fight so that the love of Christ, we know, will triumph, and that we can oppose evil wherever it is. So I'm taking it from comedy to something a little bit serious, but we can laugh and we can have fun, and there's nothing more than I enjoy being together with family and friends and having a good joke, because they're, the foibles of life and the ability to laugh at the stuff that drives you crazy. I mean, the people that I know who are kind of the most healthy and kind of vibrant are those who, there's some people who see a problem or who see somebody who's driving them nuts and they get really down about it. And that can happen. But the ones who can just say, can you believe what happened? And you can just laugh about it, and you cannot take it too seriously. And you can roll with it. It's just a great way to live.
All right. So we're going to take a quick break, and we want to thank you so much. This has been a special guest this morning for the morning call, Bishop Robert McClory, the Diocese of Gary, and thank you so much for being here. Again, you're listening to WJOB 1230 M 104.7 FM, and when we come right back, we'll take your calls. And don't forget, at 8:30, we have the Whiting-Robertsdale Chamber of Commerce show. So we'll be right back.
It's the simplest expression, the smallest thing that changes everything. A smile. So easy. A smile lights it up. apologizes and welcomes unconditionally. Because the shortest distance between two people is a smile.
Thank you.
Strack and Van Til, where making life easier starts with a smile.
Ogren Insurance, Hammond's oldest family-owned independent insurance agency, now in its third generation providing clients in the Chicago area with products from quality insurance companies to handle your every need. Regardless of driving history, Ogren Insurance can find the right coverage for you at competitive prices. To learn more about the insurance solutions and services we offer throughout Indiana, Illinois, and Michigan, call 219-933-0076 or visit our website, ogreninsurance.com. We're located at 6929 Homan Avenue in Hammond, Indiana. Do business locally with someone you know and trust.
When your home needs help, the last thing you need is a faceless corporation or sales-driven franchise. At Myers Companies, we've been proudly local since 1951, born and raised right here in Northwest Indiana. We're family-owned and operated, built on trust, hard work, and integrity. And because we're family, we treat you like family. Your comfort and safety always come first. For HVAC, plumbing, and electrical done right, choose Myers Companies. Local. Family owned. Here for your family.
For a fast and friendly car wash, go to Easy Clean Car Wash. Open 7 days a week in 4 convenient locations: Highland, Griffith, Cherville, and Lansing. Free vacuuming, air freshener, and a towel with every wash. It's fast, safe, and gentle. For more information and hours of all our locations, visit myeasyclean.com. Also, see how you can wash your car daily with our $10 Ultimate Wash for only $19.99 per month. Give your car the best clean at Easy Clean Car Wash.
All right, we're back, and that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. Great guest this morning, and don't forget, next Wednesday at 7 a.m. I've got Scott Miller, and Scott Miller, of course, no stranger to these airways. Used to be on as the superintendent of schools of the school city of Hammond, and then he was on. Hey, Jed, come here a sec. He's gonna come back, and then he's going to see the bishop, and then. He is the chief of staff of the city of Hammond, and he's also running for county council. So he's going to be a fun interview as well. 845-1100 is the number to call. That was really neat to have the bishop here this morning, and I appreciate all the calls. Let's do traffic and weather before we do anything else. And looking at traffic this morning, it's becoming more predictable, more standard. Just a real good long backup on the Dan Ryan this morning going into the city. Looking at the Bishop Ford actually is now backing up down to about 100 and I'd say about 103rd. So the Bishop Ford is building pretty heavily, and that's all the way into the Skyway. Skyway looks okay. The other Chicago area expressways, Kennedy, Eisenhower, Stevenson all look pretty backed up. 294, however, is flowing generally pretty well with a few short tie-ups. Northwest Indiana looks good. 8094, I-65, the toll road, and Klein Avenue are all in good shape this morning. But just be careful, folks, because Lynette's going to talk about the weather, but there also is the fact that a lot of people start leaving town this afternoon for the long weekend, Thursday being Holy Thursday and Friday being Good Friday. So people take off early, and Wednesday afternoon is when traffic really starts to build. So be careful out there. Let's talk about that weather.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 40 degrees with highs of 45 and lows of 43. It's going to be breezy and cooler with periods of rain today. And then tomorrow and Thursday we'll be having highs of 73 and lows of 52. It's be cloudy, windy, and warmer with a couple of showers and a heavy thunderstorm. And then Friday we'll be having highs of 65 and lows of 54 with variable cloudiness.
Yeah, and 65 degrees and variable cloudiness on Friday. And if you've never been to the Shrine of the Passion in St. John, it's just, as the bishop said, it's truly remarkable. It's nationally known. It draws interest from all over, and it's what many of us consider the way of the cross. So, and Friday beginning at noon, I believe the bishop will be there and leading the procession, and it's a very unique experience. So something that you can add to your list of things to do during this very busy holiday weekend. And in the meantime, we're open right now. We'll take your calls. So 845-1100 is the number to call. And yes, I did ask the bishop about the bishop from Monty Python. Again, if you've never seen the skit, it's a short little skit, but basically Monty Python makes the bishop out to be this like crime-solving Avenger 007 type character, and it's just very, very funny. And he's, his staff, he can take the hook off the staff, and it's a phone, and I believe his staff also doubles as a rifle, and it's just a very funny skit. So yes, I actually asked the bishop, and I'll probably have to go to confession now for doing so, but that's okay. I didn't ask him about that. I probably should have. 845-1100. One of the callers brought up the Artemis launch, and that is scheduled for this evening. If all goes well, about 5:24. I would assume that it's going to be carried live on a number of television stations. It's our return. It's our return to lunar orbit, and this is So I read an article last night that said this is not just a rerun of Apollo 8. This is truly remarkable, and the technology is there. And here is Jed. So I wanted to point out, Jed, that another low point in WJOB history accomplished by yours truly. I asked the bishop this morning if he'd ever seen the skit "The Bishop" from Monty Python.
Oh, that's awful. It's an awful skit.
Well, it is, but I asked him if he saw it, and he said
it's
no.
Anglican church, at least.
He said,
it wasn't Catholic.
Right, where right. The
Yeah.
bishop is the crime-solving Avenger.
Yeah.
And so I knew
I've
you
seen
know
it.
Yes,
Yeah,
there it is. In fact,
I
it's
made
up.
a Monty Python reference the other day to a bald guy. I'm like, God, I feel like in Monty Python, I just want to slap your head. And he's like, What are you talking about? Remember? Benny Hill.
Yeah,
I think it was Benny Hill.
Yeah.
Just slapping the head on the. Hey, I do want to talk about something. Do you
Sure.
mind?
No, go ahead.
I went out to see Governor Braun yesterday at BP.
Yes.
And actually, that press conference, I think, a little bit overshadowed the beauty of opening the brand new train and all of that. And he said two things. First of all, it's just me and Dan Carden and the guy from Cranes were the reporters, but there were cameras from everybody, but they had that funeral for the fallen officer. So there weren't that many reporters, so I'm like, all right, I got to ask a bunch of questions. So I did, and sort of Andrew Garcia and Dan Carden and then the Cranes guy. And then the Cranes guy there, I think, was there to ask, find out about the Bears. That was all that it was. Carden was there to find out about the Bears, you know what I mean? And I get that, and I let them have their moment. But I really wanted to find out. I'm like, I don't get it, Governor. Why are you here? You are a Republican governor, and we are in a right-to-work state, and you haven't always, what gives here?
Yeah.
And then I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? I would say as many as did not vote for him in the trade unions and in the steel workers unions. Maybe the trade unions more so than the steel workers, if you ask me. But I would say at least half of them voted for Trump. And so, Braun has kind of been seen as being closer to the Trump thing, although it seems like he's distancing himself a little bit right now. And I was very surprised that he came in and walked along Indianapolis Boulevard there. We have the full tape, and it's kind of funny because the big trucks were going by beeping in support of the union, so we had to keep stopping for him to talk and let the trucks go by. But he was pretty eloquent in saying that, he's a working guy. He has a bunch of working class. He's a businessman, but he also knows the business side. And he was very adamant to push, just said, basically, hey, listen, BP, you need to come, British Petroleum, you need to come to the table and you need to negotiate a fair contract.
Yeah, and so I thought this was interesting because I went online last night. There was one post, and I saw there were about 650 comments, right? And I brought this up this morning. And people were saying, and including a couple of people you and I both know quite well, and they're saying, Brian,
hold on, I'm
going to
show you something. You got to turn.
Oh, yes.
Hold on, you got to turn it. There you go, like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's going to be different because we have
Right.
brand new, nice microphones. I'm not a big fan of that. I like the headsets, but you have to.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
So thank you. So people were criticizing him for being there, and interestingly enough, MX and Ron Madlock both called in this morning, and both, of course, lifelong union members, and said, "Hey, look, we don't understand that because." If the governor is there, he's got influence. He's drawing publicity. He's drawing attention to the plight of the workers. Why were people upset about this? And I just found it odd that the number of comments last night clearly outweighed the favorable comments. Although there were people who said, "Listen, I'm a member of 7-1. I'm out there walking the picket, and I don't care who it is. I'll take their support." And Ron actually said this morning. I asked him. I said, Ron, if you were back in the days in the steel mills and you were on strike and Donald Trump showed up and he was president, would you embrace him? And he said, yeah, absolutely. He said, listen, if he's supporting me, I'm all for him. And it just seems odd.
It seems odd that he was here, but I have a feeling that Tony Ferraro was behind that. He said, hey, dude, might not be a bad photo op. And Paul Goddard and I were going back, and Paul points it out that it's going to be a good. And there he is on the front page of the Chicago Tribune and front page of Cranes, and we're talking about it on the morning show. And the Times has a big article on it. So I thought it was honestly anything that would bring those two parties together. I mean, the rest of the industry has already settled. Right. All the other oil companies said, all right, yeah, we'll pay you this much. And British Petroleum is saying, no, we're not doing that. And then they made $7.5 billion last year. And now there's a war going on. And I just filled up last night at $4.29 a gallon. And these strikes against them are looking worse and worse. And now you got the governor, a Republican governor company. So I just wonder if they're all in and they're just saying, we don't care. We have no care about what Governor Braun says. We don't care what the union says.
I think that's the case because here, look, I've talked about this before. You've talked about it. The fact is that the United States actually produces more oil than it uses. Okay, so we're based on Brent crude, all right, and the Brent crude price went up as well. But in reality, if the Persian Gulf shut down tomorrow, it really truly has minimal effect on the U.S. economy and our ability to fuel our trucks and our cars and our planes and everything else. And so we worry more about what happens in the U.S. and Canada and maybe Venezuela now. All right, but that's where our oil comes from, and yet we're paying this exorbitant price because it's driven up the price worldwide. And I just get the impression, and I've gotten the impression for a long time that BP doesn't care. And that BP, for example, I mean, you and I have talked about back in the day when Tom, help me out, my God, he was friends.
Tom
Kyleman, passed away about a year ago. And Tom was friends with both of us. And back in the day, you could go to Tom Kyleman and say, hey, I got this great project, and I've got this great need, and the company supported it.
Amoco, mostly.
I mean, Amoco, yeah, absolutely.
Then when he was there, it was a lot of British Petroleum, and then all of a sudden it's like there's a bunch of replacement workers in sheds staying overnight, and they're kind of trying to go after at least a good portion of the union. And I just, I think sometimes, I worked on both sides of this as a crisis communication specialist for Public Communications, Inc. before I came here. I won't even go into the cases. And I got this, I got a labor relations degree, which is labor relations is how do you bring it's company's interests and what is the union's interest. And I come out of labor, so I know the idea. And so, but I haven't practiced any of that in a long time. But I do know that there are times when the union has to read the room. And I don't know what's going on with NIPSCO. What happened overnight? Did they settle?
No, my understanding they have not. So I don't know where it stands right now.
Yeah,
but,
we have a 7:00 opening for that tomorrow. I'm hosting the show. I've got Dave Pishker at 6:30, and then I've got Eric Schultz of Local 7-1 at 7:35. So I've left it open that I need either the union and management or whatever. I got about a 40-minute slot there.
Yeah, and
I want to hit, but I don't. I want to make sure I wrote a senior thesis in 1984-85 that you, in all of your labor negotiations, whether you're the company or you're the union, you have to take into the interests of the community. And that was my thesis, and luckily, the guy liked it, and he goes, "Man, you really got a handle on this." And I go, "Well, I think it's not the stakeholders of British Petroleum aren't just the shareholders. The stakeholders are the people that live 150 yards from that cat cracker."
Sure.
And now you have people that have not been there for 30 years operating that thing, and are they safe? I don't know.
I think, look, I agree with you. I think you have to, first off, you have to read the room, like you said. Okay, you have to read the room. You have to understand the impact, and that facility has an impact on all of Northwest Indiana, but I think British Petroleum gives me the impression, and not based on any fact, just based on a gut feel that the rumors are true, that if the price is right, they'd sell that plant in a heartbeat.
Well, I feel as if I can't figure it out. They're making $7.5 billion. This is 100 jobs they're going after, like the maintenance workers, and they're trying to slash them. I don't know. It's almost like what do they say? Picking up pennies to watch dollars.
It doesn't
make any sense. And now Braun is over there, and he's like, "Dude, you guys need to come to the table, right?"
Yeah.
And then as he's walking off, we asked him, "Hey, would you get in the middle of these negotiations and get an agreement?" And he's like, "Oh, the two parties need to come together, blah blah blah." But he wasn't adamant that he wasn't going to do anything. And so what you're looking at from the company's standpoint is that when you got that governor who runs the environmental item, you're all of a sudden that changes the game. That in a war.
Right.
I asked Braun, I'm like, "Well, does a war change this?" He goes, "Well, geopolitical events affect us here locally, and, we have to take everything into account." And I'm like, it's stacking up for British Petroleum to at least take a look at it, and they're like, "No way, pal."
I just get the feeling that they are trying to impose their will from a great distance. And like you, I've negotiated about 120 labor agreements now in my career. And so
everyone's got to think of the community.
Right. And this one just puzzles me because I just get the impression. Look, your dad was a contractor. Your dad used to be out there. And, I'm sure
negotiating with the pipe fitters was always my dad coming home throwing plans against the wall because of the pipe fitters. But anyways.
But the point is that there was a balance. Okay, there was a balance back in the day. I've talked to your dad before, and he said it was kind of a balanced act, if you will. Right? The pipe fitters would cause problems, and there were times where you had to deal with one union or another, but everybody kind of learned their space and kind of worked together. And I just get the impression now that BP doesn't want to work together with anybody. They're just like, "Hey, you know what? We're in London. This is just another place that we have, and it's somewhere in the middle of the United States. And yeah, it's a big operation, and
I think it's their biggest one, right?
It is their only. It is their biggest.
Yeah. So it's actually kind of interesting to watch. Because I cannot, for the life of me, figure out why they're taking such a hard stand. Why Braun is in on this. I talked to a couple of the other people. I won't bring their names out, and they're like, I wonder if this was like a directive from the very top, like Trump and his administration said, "Get over there. We cannot have 80% oil coming out of that refinery right now because we got a war, and we don't know how long that's going to last."
Well, and think about it. So let's say Trump is supposedly, I mentioned, he's supposed to be on the air tonight at 8:00. And he's going
that
to
is a
announce
must-watch
It's a
tonight.
must-watch, absolutely. Whether you like him or not, you need to see what he has to say. But let's just say that he announces.
You need to move on that mic. Stay on it.
He needs to. He announces that in the next 2 weeks it's going to be an end of hostilities. All right, and let's say that he's even worked out something with the Iranians to reopen the Gulf. All right. Regardless, prices are going to go down everywhere, but here. And I brought this up last week when I drove back from Florida. The highest price that I paid for gas. Florida has no refineries. Average price of gas down there, $3.62. I go to Georgia. Georgia has some of the lowest priced gas in the nation because they have very few state taxes. Like $3.22. All right. Tennessee, $3.30, $3.40. Same with Kentucky. Southern Indiana, all the way to Indianapolis, is like $3.42, $3.38, $3.42. You get up here and you look at it, and this was last week, and it's at like $3.92. All right, and
$4.29 yesterday at Shell on Calumet Avenue in Munster.
And remember when we were in high school and then when we were in college, and you took an economics course, and they said part of the cost of goods is transportation, right? So where is the highest priced gas right now that I can find anywhere? It's the BP station that is literally like a few hundred yards from those cat crackers on Indianapolis Boulevard, right by Calumet College. They always have the highest priced gas. And you can't tell me that if things settle out with Iran, that the price of gas is going to drop, but in the region, it's going to stay high as long as that place is out on strike. It's going to have a huge impact on our economy.
Well, actually, it's a lockout right now.
Well, it's a lockout.
Yeah,
but
I think one of the issues is, if they've been locked out, do they get unemployment? I don't know if that's been resolved, but I'll have to find out.
It'd be interesting. Should have asked Braun that one.
What?
Should have asked Braun that one.
I had two things. I was just like, dude, I can't believe you're here. I wanted to get that explanation, and I led off with that question, and then I wanted to know if the war.
I asked the bishop. I asked the bishop about Monty Python. Come on.
I only had two questions. Everyone else had one. He gave me two, but I talked to the press guy, and I think we're going to get on the rotation where Braun is regular. Good. And here, so maybe once a month or something like that. But see, at the same time, I don't know where NIPSCO is. I didn't hear anything this morning.
Haven't heard anything.
Yeah, but that's another one where both sides have to read the room. You know what I mean? And I mean, we're in storm season, and if they were to lock them out, the workers out, like BP. British Petroleum did, or if they were to strike, as they have done in the past, then all of a sudden you have all these people coming in from Kentucky trying to fix our wires. And I can tell you from personal experience, when we lose power here, there's a lot difference from all these guys I know that went to Gavitt and they went to Bishop Knoll and they're over here fixing the wires versus some dude who comes out of south of Louisville to come up here and work on our wires.
In fact, one of the things that I've had a NIPSCO engineer tell me, which is, part of their modernization, is the fact that they're actually documenting where everything basically is fed from, because there are a lot of guys that just happen to know, like you said, they went to Morton, they went to Clark, they went to Whiting, wherever, and they know, I've got to go fix that line on that pole because that's what's going to solve the problem. Versus whatever they have in writing, which, may or may not.
Guys looking on a laptop or looking on a iPad at some schematics from the 60s that don't mean anything. Have you ever like been on I'm sure you have. You've been on a construction site and they have to bust up an intersection right here at 165th in Indianapolis. It always smells like gas, and I don't know what
because there's all those pipelines.
Yeah, there's all those pipelines. I don't know what they're going to do. But they did it before, and they opened it up, and there's all these lines going everywhere. There's cable lines, there's electrical lines, there's sewer lines, there's drinking water lines, and they're like, none of this is on. It's 80 years old, and none of it's on the.
No, none of it's on the drawings. I mean, it's like, but there are still, and you're right. The local crews, they know where that stuff is. Okay, They've dug down there before. They've seen the problems. They know what exists. And you're right. You bring in a crew from Kentucky or Illinois or Ohio or Michigan, and they're going to be like, well, according to this, there's only one line there. And it's like, yeah, well, there's actually three other feeds that go to that location. And I've had countless numbers of NIPSCO employees before who said, yeah, well, they say it comes from here, but it actually comes from over there. And, they've explained to me. In fact, I know that when my power goes out, I know when the guy drives down the alley and he's checking the line fuses, I usually will go out there and I'll say, hey, by the way, you need to check that one over there, because the guy will be like, well, no, that's not part of your circuit. It's like, yeah, it is.
It's same thing here. The guy from Doty, well, hey, you better check this, you better check that. You're better off asking Doty Russell a lot of times, where do you think the problem is, than to, it's just, especially if it's a new guy. Now, they've had the same people in these areas. They had a guy named Dog, Brittany Semenek's dad, forever, and I would just call his house because Brittany worked for us. And she'd go, hey, Dad, WJOB's off. And you go, okay, which? So we're at the juncture of two power grids. So you can use either one, and having to explain that to some guy from Kentucky is just going to drive me nuts. But the summarizing this is there's a lot going on. Like, people were there about the Bears yesterday, and I don't know if Braun said anything that changed anything. People were there about the train yesterday. These are huge stories, and I'm on them. But the ones that affect us on a daily basis right now are happening right there on Indianapolis Boulevard, where these guys are walking up and down, and the company's playing hardball. And then the NIPSCO thing, it may have settled in the wee hours of the morning. We don't know. But their contract ran out last night.
The only thing I would think is that NIPSCO, given all the bad publicity that it's gotten recently, that they'd be more apt to settle than, say, BP, because they're a little bit more local, although they're run basically out of state. They're not run here.
Yeah, they're you always got to watch in this area, because we are so ripe, and we're so ripe right now, and you got to watch for companies that are coming from the outside to make money here. Right. Certainly, British Petroleum is one of them. Certainly, NiSource, is in a lot of different states. And it's not like they don't have a local presence, but in the end, they're taking the money out of here and they're sending it back to headquarters. And that changes the dynamic of a lot of these big businesses.
Well, let's leave this discussion with this. I'll quote my brother David, okay, who's friends with you, and he said that basically the merger between BP Oil and Amoco basically was revenge for the revolution, because their attitude, their whole mindset about this region is totally different than the old Amoco Oil, the old Standard Oil of Indiana, which was kind of homegrown, and you didn't have to bark very, very loud or very far to get the attention of the people in Chicago. And then all of a sudden, you've got the British in London who are controlling this thing, and they're looking at it from quite a distance. And I just don't think that it has the importance that it should have, or that we feel it should have, when it comes to the people leading that company. So,
hey, man. Hey, is that a long enough segment for you?
Yeah. How was that?
Hey, I know people are calling, and I just Tommy asked me to come in, but I'm out. I'm Jim Dietlow. I'm the owner here, and thanks for letting me come in.
Not a problem. Glad to have you. And when we come back from this break, we'll have the Whiting-Robertsdale Chamber of Commerce show. So stay tuned. We've got some great guests this morning.